So I will start with Carl. I see you here. So Carl Magnus Norden is founder and executive chairman of Volta Trucks, a company that he started investigating in 2016 and founded in 2019 with the aim to produce zero emission and safe trucks. Well, Carl, we all know the clear benefits of electrification. It reduces CO2, it reduces noises, it reduces the spare parts and service. But at Volta Trucks, you didn't settle even on this and took it to the next level of envisioning a future without accidents, and even your company is claiming to solve the truck drivers shortage in the world. So we would like to hear how you're going to do that.
Unfortunately, I couldn't join you in Israel. I would enjoy the weather. But anyway, coming to your question, is really that we have designed our truck from the ground up based on electric. Why is that important? Is that we have the motor on the rear axle, we have the batteries between the ladder frame, which gave us the opportunity to totally redesign the cab. And what does that lead to? A normal diesel truck, the design of a diesel truck is logical. You basically have a big piece of metal, which is the engine. You have another that is the gearbox. You want to maximize the load space, so you push this forward, and then you dress the cab around it, which means that the driver is sitting firstly on one side, and is sitting high up, which creates blind spots. What we then, due to our sort of starting with electric, we could totally redesign the cab. Also, the disadvantage with a high seating position is not only blind spots, it's also that the driver, especially in distribution traffic, he often leaves the truck 15, 20, 25 times a day. Jumping down, after a few years in the business, they have problems with knees, hips, and joints. We lower the cab, so it's more or less like you step into a modern bus. So there's not that problem. Taking away the diesel engine in the center of the cab or under the cab, we then can position the driver there. So the driver can not only step out on the traffic side, but also on the pavement side, which is also safer, better, etc. We have sliding doors, so quite a frequent accident is that the door is opening and you have a biker or a motorbiker or something driving into it. We maximize the glazing, so our ambition is definitely to minimize the blind spots of a city truck. So the first one then you ask reducing or getting more people into the industry. I think we can do that long term. I think short term, our customers will have easier to recruit and retain the drivers in the work pool. So, because it should be a safer, nicer environment than they are used to. Also, then, of course, with electric, the noise reduction is definitely a benefit, etc. And then for everybody around the truck, actually in London, they have made studies. 4% of the traffic is trucks, and they're involved in 78% of all fatal accidents with bikers. So more direct vision is better for, obviously, for the accident rates, and reducing blind spots is also very important. So I stop there.
Yeah, that sounds amazing, a nice vision. And you know, I always say that a leader without a vision is like a letter without a stamp. It will never reach its destination. And what I love about you, Carl, is not only you're a serial entrepreneur with many successes, but you have a great vision behind you. Now, Carl, let's imagine a future where your trucks are not limited to any range, not limited to 200 kilometers, not limited to 400 kilometers. You don't need even to stop and charge your vehicles or your trucks, and you continue driving because you have a platform to charge them in a wireless way. Well, you don't need to imagine that, because we have with us here on stage Oren Ezer, who is co-founder and CEO of Electron, a company that provides wireless charging technology, which allows charging for electric vehicles on the go to avoid any need to stop the vehicle for charging. So Oren, why don't you explain to Carl and to the audience how your platform works and how we can gain from the advantages it brings. And remember, I get 5% commission on all deals made on this panel.
So actually we saw before the numbers, huge numbers. We are going to move, let's say we have 1.4 billion vehicles around us. Let's assume that we are going to replace half of them in the next decade. And to think that each vehicle will have its own charger, it's crazy. And I think that we need to ask ourselves if we have enough resources on the planet to support this huge shift. So I think that we need to think different. Sharing, to share infrastructure. If we think about fleets, they drive longer distance, they consume huge amount of energy, and they are most polluting. So as you mentioned, what if we can provide the energy to the vehicle while the vehicle in operation without adding complexity? Because the cables that we have today and the charging system that we have today will add complexity. So we don't want to do it. So wireless charging, you mentioned wireless charging, but we need to split it to dynamic. It means that we can charge the vehicle while the vehicle is driving. And we have semi-dynamic and static in cases where the vehicle is driving slowly. And if we park the vehicle, if it's for loading goods at the loading dock, or if it's outside airport when we are waiting for passengers. So we think that wireless charging can accelerate the adoption of EVs. We can open it for everyone. All types of vehicles can be charged from the same platform. And I think that the trucks are a good example for using wireless charging.
Okay, that's really innovative. And innovation is not to follow where the path may lead, but to go instead to where there is no path and leave a trail. And that's what you are doing. So I want to move to Menno Klangelt, who is the CIO of VDL Group, a large multinational consisting of 105 operating companies in 4 main activities: subcontracting, finished products, manufacturing of passenger cars and buses and coaches. Prior to that role, Menno has been the founding and managing director of the VDL ETS, the automotive innovation and engineering company of VDL Group. Menno, at VDL ETS, among other things, you work on electrifying transport buses. I want to ask you, since electrification enables new way of designing, of structural design of the vehicle, and it opens new door of thinking because we remove the barrier of combustion engines. So how can you please expose us to the benefits we will see in the field of public transportation and how it will affect the passengers in the future?
Yeah, thanks for having me on this forum. And obviously, I would have loved to be here in Tel Aviv, being there on the stage, but unfortunately, that's not the case. How vehicles will change is something that Carl Magnus already alluded to. So basically, you have much more of a free form when you place batteries in the places where they should be. So in between the axles to make sure that the center of gravity is as low as possible and the drivability of the vehicle becomes as good as anything. What it allows further is that passengers get a fully flat space in which you basically transport people rather than batteries and all kinds of humps and bumps that exist through all kinds of combustion components. Next to that, you get a very silent interior, so helped by the fact that electric driving simply is much lower noise levels than any combustion engine, not to only take away also the rattling and everything that comes with build quality. Of course, VDL buses have never rattled or made any noise to that aspect, but what it does highlight is build quality becomes so much more important in your steps forward. If you then combine that also with sophisticated aerodynamics and a completely optimized energy system, so that the vehicle also consumes less than previously, where you had an almost unlimited heat source that you could use for heating up the interior. Now all the energy you need in order to make heat inside the interior also completely changes. So if you make use of residual heat from electrical components and convert it back to cooling down the interior using all kinds of heat pump systems and basically a closed loop design, that allows you to much more freely care about passenger and the people around you. So a much more silent, much more comfortable space where people enjoy their trip from A to B.
Yeah, that's sound very nice. So I understand the passenger in the future will sit more comfortably while saving the planet.
Absolutely.
Philip Scarth is the general manager of FPT Industrial Innovation Center, where innovative technologies and solutions for future industrial powertrain are developed. Philip, we're very interested to hear about the directions you are working on in the Innovation Center. How do you see the EV of the future? And most important, how do you see the electric powertrain of the future?
Okay, thank you for having me here today. It's for us in our sector, we're not just looking at electrical vehicles for the powertrains of the future. We're looking across the demands of our customers require a vast range of potential powertrain sources. So we look at clearly battery electric. We're also looking at hydrogen fuel cell technology to give us the range that we're looking for. But we haven't given up completely on the internal combustion engine. We're looking also at hydrogen combustion to give the distance, give the autonomy to the vehicle, and also some new developments in renewable fuels. So our sector is very complex because we're looking for not only a vast range of different energy carriers, we're also looking at a vast range of different end users. Because in our sector, we don't look just at on-road, but we also have a whole range of off-road, so tractor and construction equipment solutions to look at. So these are we look at the range that we have is also complex. We're dealing with this, trying to look not just at the powertrain itself, but actually the control of the powertrain. So we're looking at very complex, let's say, control strategies, bringing in AI into the mix to looking at how we improve our the control of the data. So we bring, let's say we have systems of energy controllers who look forward, bringing in data from the environment. For example, if we look at a truck which is driving along the road, if the system knows that in 3 kilometers there is a long downhill stretch, the ideal solution is we will drain the battery to have it empty when we are going to recuperate down that long stroke. So we are working hard, not just on the actual hardware itself, but on actually the control of the whole of the energy system, looking not just at the powertrain, to the vehicle, but also to the environment, and then, of course, to the possibility of platooning. So integrating the powertrain into the full system is the way we're looking forward to the future.
Thanks, Philip. So you are not only making e-powertrain more efficient, but you are also working to make them smarter and more intelligent, so they can reduce the CO2 footprint and increase the range.
Exactly.
With us is Alex Ashmore, who is the Vice President of BorgWarner Inc. and President and General Manager of BorgWarner Aftermarket, responsible for more than $900 million annual sales in the aftermarket. Alex, as we all know, an EV has much less moving parts and mechanical parts than a combustion engine vehicle, and therefore less service parts are needed and much less maintenance is needed. This will eventually affect your current revenue stream. It will take time till that will happen, of course, but still we would like to understand what are the services and revenue channels that you and companies like you will need to establish in the next 10 years to overcome the change to EV and continue growing your revenues?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it shows the difference between the original equipment market and the aftermarket. The original equipment market is changing in steps and changing very, very quickly. When you look at the aftermarket, you look at the vehicles in operation, and as one of the panelists already said, there's 1.4 billion of those vehicles running around the roads today, light vehicles, and there's about 80, 90, and maybe a bit more than 90 million coming into the vehicles in operation every year. So there's a gradual change. So the message that we give to most of our customers is firstly on the combustion engine parts for the next 10 years, probably 15 in most geographies of the world. you've got growth, but you've got an opportunity to build on top of that with electrification, with ADAS, and particularly as well to create new models with all the connected vehicle and the telematics devices that are fitted in vehicles now. More than 40% of cars sold around the world now have a telematics device. And when you think about the information and how quickly that can be shared remotely from all the electronics, you know, and 50% of a vehicle is going to be electronics by the end of the decade. In terms of the cost, there's an opportunity to create a lot more new business models for predictive maintenance and servicing vehicles as we go forward.
Great, thanks, Alex. With us as well is Peter Stavared, who is Head of Innovation at CAVT, with more than 20 years automotive engineering and business development background. CAVT is located in Gothenburg, Sweden. The company develops mobility solutions for a different tomorrow and serves Geely Group with innovation solutions. Peter, we would like to hear from you what are the exciting things you are developing for the EVs of the future, and what, in your opinion, is the biggest barrier and challenge for mass adoption of EV, and what are you doing to overcome those challenges?
Thank you, Shady. Thank you for having me. Yes, so what we are doing now, we are developing mobility solutions for a different tomorrow. That means we are looking into EV technology for sure, but also what is really important for us to understand are the customer, the users, and the use cases to really target the right requirements. For example, when it comes to developing a vehicle, right sizing, it starts with, for example, top speed. What should the top speed be? And that drives the mass of the whole vehicle when it comes to a lot of systems. Of course, adding intelligence to the vehicle, making it taking the most efficient route and all that, that is also important. We also see a new type of customer that are the fleet operators and the fleet owners, which is very much different to the private users. The private user is hard to predict. You don't know what the vehicle will be used for, but when it comes to this mobility as a service, it's much easier, you could say, because you know, it's like the trucking business. You know what will happen and how to set it up with charging and everything. The biggest challenge, I guess, right now is the infrastructure. It's not walking hand in hand as we saw on the picture before. So I think we need to balance also the transformation. I believe also we will see many powertrains over the coming years. It will not all be electric, but when it becomes electric, we really need to use that vehicle for many kilometers and very efficiently. So we are also exploring now with some of the brands in Geely a sharing model where you could share your vehicle, you lease it on a monthly basis, and you can share it with people you trust.
Thanks, Peter. So actually, you're looking into reducing the CO2 footprint of the vehicle in the lifetime by using more kilometers of the same vehicle and the same batteries. So that's a good point, because when we are talking about electric vehicles being cleaner than combustion engine vehicles, we need to remember that electric vehicles, even if they are 100% clean on the road, the electricity produced to charge a battery is not necessarily 100% produced from clean sources. And the production of the battery itself is also a high energy consuming process that emits CO2 gases as well. So I want to ask the panel here, on top of decarbonizing the grid, which is obvious and being done by most countries, what additional technologies or solutions are you working on to improve that CO2 footprint of an EV? So we start with you, Oren. How can Electron make EV more clean towards zero emission than it is today?
First, if we will reduce the size of the battery, the vehicle will be light and more efficient. So I think it's a must to drive. Most of the time we drive from our house to the office back and forth 20 kilometers, and we are carrying 1 ton or even more with us on a daily basis. So it's not efficient at all. Even if one time a year we need to drive, I don't know, in Israel it's a very short distance, but to Eilat for 4 hours, we are buying a huge battery and we carry it with us on a daily basis. I think that we need to think about using renewable energy. As we understand, we have the sun during day. So instead of, if we want to use it, we need to store it again. So again, we have batteries. But if we want to eliminate it or to reduce it, we need to think about ways, different ways to consume energy during daytime. So it can reduce the size of the battery at the solar panel side, but also we can help reducing the huge demand from the grid. It will be basically overnight, so we can spread the energy across the whole day. So wireless charging, we can deploy it almost everywhere, so we can give access to charging in operation time, so we can reduce the size of the battery, and we can spread the energy across the whole day.
Yeah. Carl, I would like to hear your point, your insight about that.
Well, from our point of view, first of all, for us, it's important we're not a research project. We want to come to the market as soon as possible and basically make an impact as soon as possible. So every diesel truck that we can replace, I think we have achieved something. And especially in our business case in the cities, the CO2 emissions are, of course, very important, but the NOx, the particles, the noise and the shakings, etc., is making life less attractive in the city. So that is a side effect that we get immediately. But anyway, on that, is sort of coming to the market as soon as possible and starting to make an impact as soon as possible. Then we have taken the latest but existing technology basically in our trucks that might have a footprint, or have a footprint, as you say, in the supply chain. What are we doing about that? We are now, right now, we're looking at all our suppliers and our full supply chain, and firstly trying to quantify what kind of emissions do we have in the supply chain? Because if you can't measure it or don't start with measuring, you cannot improve it. So that's step number one. Number two is really that we work with these suppliers and seeing, and we don't have a resistance there. Everybody wants to become more sustainable. So it's more working together. Where can we limit? What is possible? I mean, it's no use to try to chase sort of improvements that cost you several billions. You have to do the lower hanging fruit first and reduce. And of course, what we also can do is look at our engineering, thinking already when we construct a truck, what pieces at the end of life, I hope that is 30 years later, 40 years later, but at the end of life, what can we reuse? What can we basically maybe even, take the parts apart and reuse, etc. So you should have a more holistic view of basically from start of the supply chain to end of life. And that's our ambition. It's not happening overnight, but that's where we want to go. And as I said, for us, it's very important to work with partners in the different fields. And I feel no resistance. Everybody wants to go in the same direction. So we want to lead that process.
Yeah, thank you. Alex, I want to move to you because BorgWarner bought Akasol recently, who are a leading battery manufacturer. And we thought maybe you can share some trends and technologies being developed in this area to make batteries more efficient or make the footprint of those batteries less effective.
Yeah, thanks for the question. And Akasol it's a high-performance battery systems manufacturer, really specialized on commercial vehicle, off-road, rail, and some industrial applications. And it's growing fast as well, 1 gigawatt of capacity last year, growing to 5 by the end of next year. And the things we're working on are the general, pretty much the general trends in the industry. Obviously, reduce cost is the first one, and that's going to make battery vehicles and trucks more affordable and a better total cost of ownership for everyone. So we need help with reduced cost. We need help with, increasing the power density and the energy density, shortening the charge times and making them have a less degrading effect on the lifetime, and anything that's going to help us with durability and, of course, reinforcing safety around the battery, and perhaps linked back into the cost factor. Anything that can kind of move the chemistry a little bit away from the rare metals and the ups and downs in commodity pricing, well, mainly the ups really, that those rare metals have is going to be helpful to make this kind of nascent industry develop a lot more quickly.
Yeah, that takes me to the next question. After almost 2 years of COVID, we are now experiencing some strange behavior of the market and the economy. For the first time since a decade of decline in battery prices, this is the first year that battery prices are changing direction and are going up due to commodity prices. In addition, we are experiencing shortage of chips and commodities to produce vehicles. Ironically, while we are here talking about the vehicles of the future, some of the OEMs right now are not able to produce the vehicles of today. How do you believe all this situation will affect the OEMs and their EV development and its progress to the road? And does this create advantage for startup over OEMs? I want to start with you, Philip.
Thank you. Yes, it's clear for OEMs it's a great challenge that we have at the moment, because what we obviously have is a situation where we need to produce the product of today and invest in the product of today, which is internal combustion engines for our sector, diesel engines, primarily natural gas. At the same time, we need to be developing the powertrains in the future for decarbonization of future with all the technologies that I mentioned before. At the same time, the fluctuations in the commodities market, from the battery prices, from chip difficulties, can't take us away from that vision, that long-term vision, because we're looking at a 10, 15, 20-year vision. We need to basically keep our eye on the final goal and keep trying to invest on that. Going back to your point about the startup community, is clearly, as I mentioned before, we have a big the bandwidth of technologies that an OEM needs to cover, not just keeping the current product alive and developing, because we still have Euro 7, we still have CO2 reduction, 2 steps thereof. We need to be, there's a demand on that of R&D budget for that particular activity. At the same time, we need to be investing on the real novel technologies. So one of the solutions that we're working on within open innovation in our sector is to open up to the startups to bring in that novelty that we're looking for. We can't just look at internally created novelty. So we're looking at working with startups closely to bringing our knowledge as an OEM and our customer database, our customer information, to leverage the dynamics of the startup community with our products to improve together an effective product. So that's what we're doing from the startup point of view.
And you have a lot of startups here today, so you can start.
We're welcome. We're speaking some really interesting startups this morning, so it was really nice to see some good stuff coming out of Tel Aviv.
Great. Menno, we would like to hear your opinion about that topic.
I think we're talking about a couple of different crises that happened at the same time. So we had COVID kicking in quite hard and still lasting or flaming up again. That has taken away part of our sales in the touristic sector, so the coach vehicles, where basically our sales were nullified. But at the same time, we also see actions of governments to accelerate the move to zero emission policies and to pull them in rather than to push them out. And that helped us tremendously also in our development process, but also the sales of our zero emission vehicles. We've been on the market with zero-emission public transport buses since 2016, have over 1,000 vehicles in operation, all running quite well. We're now on to the next generation, or close to launching the next generation, with a lot of innovation inside. So to your earlier point, we're moving to lighter weight materials. We're using much more optimized systems in total, allowing at the end of the day, and I think that is also to the point of Oren, we're starting to consume less. And if you consume less, then your batteries can get smaller. If your batteries get smaller, then your vehicle gets lighter. If your vehicle gets lighter, it consumes less. And then you get into this nice vicious circle where you want to be in. And then with the horizon ahead of us, with new battery technology coming in, with higher density, free-form shapes also of batteries rather than those square packs that you need to find space for, there's a lot of innovation ahead of us. That's also why we love the Israeli innovation landscape. We're collaborating with a couple of Israeli companies in Quantum Hub, being active also in that whole innovation space, trying to grab those guys that help us to take the next step forward. Being a rather traditional manufacturer, we need that external impulse to get going, to keep us on our toes, to make sure that we do the right thing, we explore the unknown, and that we really take some risk in what is more a software-based solution right now than it is a hardware-based solution. And I think that also emphasizes the point that was made earlier by Carl Magnus and also by Alex. So we're making best use of that total ecosystem across the globe, I would say.
Yeah, thanks, Menno. I have 1 minute to get your answer, Peter.
Yeah, I think many good things has already been said, but if I would like to add something, I think it's the word sustainability, which is often mistaken for just being an environmental solution, but it really means people, planet, and profit. It doesn't work without the profit. So when it comes to developing vehicles for tomorrow, we really need to think about, do we fulfill these 3 P's, planet, profit, and people, exactly. Thank you, Shady. No, I think we really need to find the solution together and be open and share everything from data much more than we have been kept it tight a lot, but I think we can be a bit more open on some topics. It's not a differentiator for our end users we're talking about here. It's more smart standards that we all will benefit from.
Thanks, Peter. So our time is up. I want to thank you all for joining us. It was a pleasure having you here, and good luck to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.